Boom! We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be, and of course, however you may be listening. Well, the Iowa Hawkeyes got back on track today. It was definitely a much needed victory. Um, they looked well improved in many different areas. I'm just pulling up the score here on my phone. They won 29 to 13. Now, in fairness, this is not a good Maryland team. There's a good chance that they will have another, or I don't know. I don't even know who their coach is anymore. To tell you the truth, it kind of looked like last year they were getting back on track a little bit. I'm not so sure that that's the case. It is Mike Loxley who played for Towson State, it looks like, and he has a record of 33 and 40. Um, I don't know why this says it says Maryland 33 and 40 and then it says 35 and 66. I think that's probably what it is because it's also counting his time with Maryland when they were um that's interesting. It doesn't make any sense. It has it maybe he had two different stops there. He was there in 2015 in which they went 1-5 and then he resumed in 2019. But anyways, from 2021 to 2023, he had 7-6, 8-5, 8-5 records. In the Big Ten, he went 3-6, 4-5, and 4-5. And it did kind of seem like Maryland was on the uptick, uh, especially with the Tagovailoa quarterback, the brother of Tua Tagovailoa. But they have definitely taken a step back this year. So, anyways, enough with Maryland. Point is, it's not the best team in the world, but it was on the road. Iowa has struggled on the road outside of their win against Minnesota, in which really, realistically, it was only a strong second half that Iowa had. This was still a sound victory. Iowa did leave a lot of points on the board. Thank goodness for Drew Stevens, who definitely, even though he is not having a perfect season, is still one of the best kickers in the Big Ten. I would say he's probably a top 15, 20 kicker in the entire country, at times approaching top 10. Uh, Iowa left points on the board. They're one of their first drives, if not their first drive. They were in the red zone. They had a sack on a play action pass. Jackson Stratton was sacked immediately upon his rollout. Not really his fault, just a missed assignment. Good play by Maryland's defense. And then Kamari Moulton fumbled it on the exchange. Now, was that more his fault or was it more Jackson Stratton's fault? Who knows? And that was the only turnover for the game. But again, points being left on the board. And Iowa just really did not capitalize as far as touchdowns go in this game. Before we get to that, I want to talk about Jackson Stratton. So I said in my pregame or preview video that Iowa needed to do everything in their power to not go back to Cade McNamara. As a fan, I really, really, really did not want them to go back to Cade McNamara. His time is done. There's been news coming out from Scott Docterman and others that not only physically has he kind of been hampered, he had the concussion and all of that, but mentally, spiritually, he's struggling. And that's probably the biggest reason why he did not start today is because he was not mentally there. I don't know what's going on with him, but that's kind of what I read on the matter. Um, And I wish Cade McNamara the best. I do. I think he's a good guy. He's a good teammate. He's a good leader. But as far as his intangibles go, he's average to below average. He's a small quarterback. He doesn't have a big arm. He's not blazing fast. He's not 4, 7 speed or below. Not super quick or shifty. He's just kind of like average with everything, average to below average. And that works if you are like a Michigan where he was, or a Alabama, or a Ohio State where maybe he might be a bridge quarterback where you can put him in there. He won't make any massive mistakes by and large. Although I can think of some major mistakes he did make for Iowa. But for the most part, he wouldn't be pressing as much. And he's a good locker room guy, and he could be a good player to bring in a new starting quarterback and kind of be a nice little placeholder. But for a team like Iowa, it just is not enough. Okay. And my main reason why I did not want him to start is because his time is done. We've seen enough of him. He is who he is. He is not going to magically become a 20 to 50% better quarterback. It's just not going to happen. It ain't going to happen. And Iowa needed to see what they have in their other quarterbacks. That's why I said it kind of sucked to hear the news of Marco Lainez, aka Marco Lainez, because this could have been optimal prime time for him to take major steps in his development as quarterback. Because realistically, guys, if we look at Iowa's roster, short term, Iowa does not have any, what I would categorize as good to elite quarterbacks. They don't have it. They don't have anyone that is even on the level of Nate Stanley, okay, or a CJ Beathard. They just don't have it. Could either of these, and I'm talking about Jackson Stratton and Brendan Sullivan, could they approach that? Yes, I think they could in their own unique way. And so realistically, long term, the answer really is Marco Lainez, unless Iowa is able to find somebody in the portal, which you better believe they're going to go hard at. Tim Lester has already hinted at that, which I have my reservations on, because in this new era of name, image, and likeness, if you take a huge swing on a quarterback and you miss, it's basically money down the drain. And for a school like Iowa that does not have infinite resources, they still have good resources, but not infinite. They might feel pressure or obligation to see their payment through, to see it through. And at times, it felt like that's what they were doing with Cade McNamara. Investment, see their investment through. The long term is the guys that Iowa has coming in, which is the guy that they have coming in the 2025 class, and Cash Herrera from California in the 2026 class, which hopefully no other team is able to steal him from Iowa. Jimmy Sullivan is the other one from Indiana, which I actually do really like his game, and I think he might have some success at Iowa. So, with all that said, Iowa needs to see what they have in their quarterbacks on the roster so they can properly evaluate the transfer portal and whether they do have a major need or not. And part of that was to have Jackson Stratton start. And that's what I said. I said I would rather see Jackson Stratton start, who is a preferred walk-on, who at one time, if you're not aware, was a University of Washington commit before flipping and going to Colorado State when when Washington had a coaching change. And I believe it was the guy Dubois who's now at Alabama. They need to see who they have in their quarterbacks. Not Cade McNamara. We already know what we have. He's not going to be back for next year. And this season, for all intents and purposes, is done. Okay. Iowa is really only playing for pride at this point. Jamari Harris, a sixth-year senior, decided to forego the rest of the season to prepare for the draft. This season, for all intents and purposes, is done. So Iowa at this point is playing for pride and to see what they have for next year and start working and building towards next year without having on top of trying to finish as strong as they can this season. So I was very happy to see Jackson Stratton start today. By the way, some good news. Marco Lainez apparently is cleared to go. He's been seeing some reps. I don't expect to see him play. And Brendan Sullivan is out for the season. We'll see about the bowl game. It'll be interesting to see what Iowa does with those two. I think it's likely going to be Jackson Stratton just because Marco has missed so much time this season, especially with the new offensive coordinator and all of that stuff. So, as for my analysis of Jackson Stratton, just to put a bow on this and get this done, I think he has a great frame. He's 6'5". He's a big guy, and he is way more athletic than I expected. He's not a blazer or anything like that, okay? But he is more athletic than expected. And I actually believe he's from the state of California as well, La Jolla, which is a good high school program in the state of Iowa, or California, excuse me. He did not play a great game by any means, okay? This was a classic Iowa quarterback performance this year. Iowa's strength is the run game. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, how wonderful would it be if Caleb Johnson returned? He probably won't. I think it's a 90% chance that he will go to the NFL. As he has had just a phenomenal year. And the running back position is a position where you have to stay as fresh and young as possible and not have a ton of miles on your workload because the hits start piling up. And this is a well-known thing. Now, the good news for Caleb Johnson is that outside of this year, he really hasn't had a ton of wear and tear. Yes, his freshman year, he had some wear, but his second year, he ended up not playing. I don't remember if he ended up taking a red shirt or not. But bringing this back, Iowa is a running team, so they didn't need a ton from Jackson Stratton. But here is my main point about Jackson Stratton's performance today. It made me vindicated on me saying for a long time that Iowa needed to move off of Cade McNamara. And I even said this last year. Iowa in the other phases of football is good enough to weather the storm of quarterback play. Of not having great quarterback play or even good quarterback play. And even with their main quarterback, they usually don't have that anyways. So you're not really losing anything. And so Jackson Stratton being put in there and Iowa winning, and they almost won with him at quarterback against UCLA. It just goes to show that Iowa, and I made a Facebook post about this. Let me see if I can find it because I think the way I wrote it on Facebook is a lot better. I said, I'm happy Jackson Stratton played today. Iowa needs to see what they have in him. He has a great Oh, whoops. I put Great Graham. Got to edit that. Frame at 6'5" and can run surprisingly well. I will have more on this in my post game, but it just goes to show that Iowa can win no matter who is under center. I'm not saying they should not find the best quarterback. Geez, of all these misspellings. Quarterback. I'm not saying they shouldn't find the best quarterback that they can, because they should. But what I am saying is that they don't need to have this unwavering loyalty to any quarterback, including McNamara and Sullivan. Some loyalty is good, but not unwavering. Iowa could have pulled Cade way sooner and been just fine. What could have been this year. And that's my other main point is just, Iowa in all of their wins this year has dominated and beaten teams by double digits. And I really do believe that this season is going to go down as like a lost season, like one of the probably this in 2009 or 2010, the last year of Ricky Stanzi, that is like one of those what could have been seasons. I really and truly believe that because this Iowa team is much better than their record indicates as far as talent goes. But the problem that this team has had is three things, I would say. One is not having the courage to change at quarterback and go with who they needed to get in there to win the football game. Having two unwavering support, as I alluded to in my post. Number two, the defense was inconsistent, especially on the road, and did, in a lot of ways, take a step back, but they were still good. I mean, I would still say Iowa's defense this year is good, approaching elite, but not quite elite or consistent enough to be an elite defense. But they're still very good. So that's number two. And then number three, just as a broad point, is their inconsistency. So here are the stats, guys, just to put a wrap on this. Jackson Stratton, 10 of 14, 76 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 INTs. If you look at the quarterback play all year this year, this would be like a top 5 quarterback performance this year. I I know like this is nothing great and it's not, but this still would be a top 5 performance. As crazy as that sounds for Iowa and their season this year, all of their games, this would be a top 5 performance from quarterback. And I guarantee, matter of fact, I may pull it up right now. It's just kind of hard to sort through that. As far as QBR goes, this will be a top 5 performance from Jackson Stratton. I can almost guarantee it. Yep. See, they gave him a passer rating of a 117. So it just goes to show, guys. It doesn't have the QBR, and even his QBR against UCLA for his 6 passes was a 75.5, and average I think is 50. So and then Cade McNamara's average is 115.8, and Brendan Sullivan's in his limited time was 158.6. How about Caleb Johnson, guys? This dude is just so talented. I think he's probably up to 15 and some change yards this year. Here are the updated standings. Iowa is tied with Illinois. Illinois has the tiebreaker since they're 8-3, so they are sixth in the Big Ten, and they are 7-4. The Big Ten East still reigns supreme. Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State are all in the top 5. But, Iowa and Illinois and Minnesota in that kind of middle ground of the Big Ten West, that's kind of what the Big Ten West was always known for. being is, um, just kind of like slightly above average as a whole, but no elite team. I just want to see the Indiana game real quick just to see if Indiana did better. Nope, they lost 38 to 15, and both were on the road. Indiana's going to drop a lot because they really struggled against Ohio State. But going back to the stats here, Caleb Johnson had 164 yards, 4.7 yards a carry, and I believe he broke Sean Green's single season record for rushing touchdowns. Let's just give a round of applause to him for that. He has had a magical season. Sure, the offensive line has been pretty good too, and they're semifinalists for the Jim Moore Award. The offensive line has been much, much improved, and I think depending on who comes back and claims the COOF year, the COVID year, they could be really good again next year. But what a season! He ran the ball 35 freaking times. This dude, man, it'd be so awesome if he came back. I don't think he will, but it would be awesome. Kamari Moulton had a big game too. 12 carries for 114 yards, 9.5 yards a carry, and a touchdown. Josiah 5 for 8. Even if Caleb Johnson doesn't come back, I feel really good about Iowa's running back room under Liddell Betts. He really has developed, and none of these guys, minus Caleb Johnson, it was like super highly rated. I mean, Josiah Patterson was rated like medium to low high. I think he maybe had like 5.7 rating or like high 3-star rating. And he did have some really nice offers. Non-committable offers, but still some nice offers. And Terrell Washington Jr. wasn't badly rated either. But I would say by and large, Caleb Johnson was the most legitimately recruited running back that Iowa has on the roster. Kamari Moulton was not. I mean, he was a late get for Iowa, kind of a late snag. Iowa missed on all their other prospects, and they got him out of the state of Florida. And what a find he has been. I mean, this kid has come to Iowa and worked his butt off, and he's got a bright future in front of him too. Receiving, Jacob Gill, 4 receptions, 29 yards, 7.2 yards a catch. Jariat Bowie, 2 for 15. Addison, 1 for 14. Luke Lachey, 1 for 9. Caleb Johnson, 1 for 6. Terrell Washington, 1 for 3. I think Luke Lachey should come back for the COVID year. I don't know that Luke Lachey has done enough to catapult himself. Now, the problem with the COVID year is it really does kind of backlog your roster. And it's good for the short term, but for the long term, maybe not so much. Because I do think Addison Ostrenga and Zach Ortworth and the tight end room is really talented right now. But I am not sure that Luke Lachey has done enough this year to get drafted. Now, he might get drafted just because he has really nice measurables, good size, and if he tests well, because he's an Iowa guy, he might get drafted. But still. And then Drew Stevens, I think, tied or broke the record for points in a game. He was 5 for 5 with a long of a 54, and he hit multiple 45 or beyond. He is having a much improved year this year from last year. Not like all Americans level, but I think going into next year, this kid is going to be one of the best kickers in the entire country. And I'm thinking that that's going to be the year that he puts it all together and has a magnificent season. Lastly, let's look at the team stats. Iowa, 344 total yards compared to Maryland's 227. Pass yards, 129 to 76. So Iowa's D did good there. Passing D did much better. Maryland's offense is not elite, but they are good in some circumstances or some areas. Rush yards 268 to 98. Wow. Yards per play 4.8 to 4. First downs 21 to 14. Third down Iowa was 5 of 14. Maryland 4 of 13. Fourth down 1 for 1 both. Total plays 72 to 57. Punts 7 to 3. Penalties 7 for 60 and then 4 for 30 for Iowa. One fumble loss for Iowa, 0 for Maryland. Two interceptions thrown by Maryland. Great interceptions by TJ Hall. It was a magnificent interception, really. Honestly, I thought it could have been offensive pass interference as well. I don't know if it ended up being called. Um, and then Jay Higgins got the other one. Time of possession, 37 minutes compared to Maryland's 22. All right, guys, my final thoughts here are just kind of reiterating the same stuff as before, which is I I really believe that this is going to be a lost season and just the season that could have been. Um, this Iowa team is really talented, and at their top end, they are a top 25 team, if not maybe even a top 20 team. It's just their wild inconsistency, and they left games on the table that they should not have. Especially UCLA and Michigan State. They should not have lost those two games. And hell, honestly, they shouldn't have lost the Iowa State game either. And so when I look at this season, I will always kind of think about it in that way. And it's a bummer. It's a real bummer. But there is a lot of good things to look forward for next year. Some bright spots to hold on to. Actually, earlier I said he probably has 1,500 yards. I think that this is accurate. Um, no, it's not because Iowa has played 11 games. So yeah, he probably does have 1,500 yards, whatever 1,328 plus 164 is. He's had a nice career at Iowa. I think he's done enough to be drafted at the very least in the 3 to 5 round range. And he's got good intangibles. But yeah, guys, this is going to be the season that could have been, and some of the things that are good to look forward to for next year. I do think that the Iowa wide receivers got some valuable reps for next year, and all of them will be returning unless they decide to transfer. I think there's a good chance that Seth Anderson will transfer, but we'll have to see with that. The thing is that if you're Seth Anderson, why would you transfer though? Because, just because maybe you didn't play as much as you wanted, he hasn't done enough to go to a better spot than Iowa. Um, but he could go to a smaller place, and he's still very much in the running for a starting spot. The problem is that Jacob Gill has definitely emerged at the slot receiver, but Seth Anderson is kind of in between a slot and Z receiver, and Iowa has kind of deferred to. So for our lads, it has Jarriett Bowie as the X, with Dayton Howard as the 2, Jacob Gill at the Z, and Seth Anderson at the slot. So that's good. I think Iowa, a lot of the guys on the offensive line do have that extra COVID year. I think Luke Lachey does as well. Um, I think Iowa's defensive backs are going to be a place of strength next year. As long as nobody transfers, we'll have to see again, knock on wood, as long as nobody transfers. But, Deshaun Lee, TJ Hall got great experience. Xavier Wanpa will likely be back next year. I don't think he's done enough to head off to the NFL and have a early round selection. Although he does have really good intangibles, and he might be able to, because the NFL, of course, does kind of draft guys based off of their potential, um, and rather than necessarily what they are in college. So, and the running back room is in a great spot, as I alluded to. Same with the tight end room. The offense is improved. We've seen a lot of good things, but the pass game definitely has to improve. All right, guys, that's about it, guys. Iowa improves to 7-4 on the season, 5-3 in the Big Ten, and they won 29-13. I will have you guys covered for the game preview with Nebraska versus Nebraska. That will be interesting. Before I sign off, let me see the Big Ten scores here as I record this. Nebraska is defeating Wisconsin 27-10 in the third quarter. Minnesota is up on number 4 Penn State. And of course, Minnesota is able to get a huge win that Iowa has not been able to get. Michigan's up on Northwestern. Um, so that'll be a big game against Nebraska next week. I believe it'll be a home game for Iowa, and I'll have you guys covered. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, like, comment. Anything helps the video algorithm. Please, please, please hit the like button. And I will see you guys next time. Last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy willow, and facts are feelings because your feelings just matter. I love you guys. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye bye.